Today's guest is Sun Yi. Now, he's the founder of Night Owl Nation, a community of storytellers, and one that I highly recommend you check out, especially if you're in business, and also the host of the Authentic as Fuck podcast. Now, I've followed Sun Yi for a while, originally on Instagram and then on other platforms, and I've seen him live up to everything he talks about. I was fortunate enough then to accidentally, by chance, run into him at Podcast Movement. And the beauty of that is that I was able to then bring this podcast experience to you, where Sun Yi is about to break down the many powers and abilities one can gain once they become an effective storyteller. I won't belabor the point anymore because I'm a big fan and I want you to be a big fan too. Without further ado, Sun Yi. Sun, like I said before we hit record, I've been following you for a while now. There's no airs to you and your content is just consistent. And then as I started to see what you were doing, the way you were telling stories and how you encourage people to be honest and to be authentic, I was like, how far back does this go for you? Because I saw you went to Film Academy and you're an engineer. So how does this happen where you are now?
Yeah, I'm really glad. First of all, you mentioned that because I actually like recently in the last 5 episodes for my podcast, I switched the format so that I'm basically helping people find their story, and I'm inviting like entrepreneurs and creators, and kind of help them go through their story. So I actually think that that's kind of like that's my day job. Like I have an agency that where we build websites and we do digital marketing for personal brands. And like my goal is always kind of like get their stories out so that we could present their story. But yeah, to answer your question, I've done a lot of different things. And well, I think one of the reasons why I've done so many different, two reasons. One, because like I lose interest very quickly. Like I get really obsessed over something, and then once I get kind of good at it, I kind of get bored, and then I have like the shiny object syndrome, so I keep chasing. So that's one thing, and another thing is, I think there are two types of people out there, and obviously some everything in between. But the two opposite side is I call them like makers and sellers, and I think there are people who are just like, like Steve Wozniak, right? Just dedicated to building and creating something. I call them makers. And then people that are really great at selling it. And these are the connectors that have relationships and they know how to do marketing and they know how to sell things, right? And you almost kind of need both of them. And I've I've always like been the maker and not the seller. And my wife is actually the opposite. She's my business partner, and she's like the seller. And I think there's a clear personality difference where I feel really uncomfortable asking people for favors. Like I really don't like doing sales calls, cold calls, and like just asking people for favors and things like that. Asking people to come on my podcast, those type of things. Whereas in like my wife has zero problems. Like if we're moving, like she'll call a bunch of people and all of a sudden like we have people helping us move. And like it's like and I and that seems like okay, whatever. But then like if you take that multiply throughout your whole life, what ends up happening is for her, whenever she's bumps into a problem, she has a project or something like that, she's very used to, okay, oh, I need to ask this person, and she's already very used to delegating and creating teams and things like that to make things happen, right? Whereas because I was so shy and I was so afraid to ask, I was like, oh, I'll just learn it myself. I don't want to ask. I don't want to. I know that I need a coder to do this, but I don't want to bother this person. So I'll just stay up all night learning how to make this in JavaScript. But I'm glad I did it because what I found at the end is that all of those things, I always thought I'm wasting so much time because I'm like trying something for a couple of years and then quit and do something else, quit. Good, like like try filmmaking for a couple of years, quit, coding for a couple of years, design for a couple of years, photography, like. And I always thought I was wasting time, but actually, like everything that I learned during those years helps me be better at what I do today.
That's such an incredible way of looking at things because you're right. I mean, I'm one of those people that can't even ask someone to show up to a birthday thing. I'm like, I don't want to bother people. I don't want to make them drive out. Like I totally get that. And I love that you have the self-awareness to do that, even though you're so capable. You're only so capable because you just rather not bother people. And that's important to distinguish as an entrepreneur, right? Building a company and having a partner that stays in a totally different lane and is all about it. That's such a great reminder of how important it is to not build alone, because
Yeah.
in times people do take that upon themselves.
You bring up a really great point, which is at some point I went too far, where I was just like taking on too much for like I was not delegating, I was not trusting other people. So I actually had to learn that the hard way, and then kind of I had to learn how to trust my wife. So me and my wife actually have a completely different um area of the business we focus on, so we don't cross each other. Like, so I have my lane and she has her, and like when it comes to, for example, like billing and when it comes to money and things like that, like that's her department.
It's super important. I honestly, after everyone I've ever interviewed, the one commonality that most of those people have said, whether they were venture capitalists or general entrepreneurs doing SaaS or even mom and pop shops, they all said the same thing. The partner they chose, like dualfold, right? The partner they chose to marry was the most important business decision they ever made, and that the best decisions they ever made in business was that they chose somebody who was in a completely different lane and they stay out of each other's lanes. Like they don't even have to argue about it because they know that's not what they do. And
Mhm.
honestly, I'm glad to hear that be true on your side as well. Let's get into let's get into a few things related to the work that you actually do, like you said fairly recently with Night Owl Nation. Because from what I've seen, you've got these cohorts and people are able to like work together. It's not just like you with one person, correct?
Yeah. So the bigger problem I see with people is not information. I feel like most people know what they need to do. The real problem is actually like, do they do it, right? Like, so I think everybody knows that, okay, if I want to get fit, I know I need to eat healthier and go to the gym. Are you okay? Are you going to do it, right? So, and it's kind of the same thing with storytelling. Like everybody comes and asks me to teach them how to do storytelling, but that's like somebody coming to me and saying, "Can you can you teach me how to become a better author?" I'm like, "Well, keep writing." Right? So I wanted to create a place where people can come and continuously practice storytelling so they can get better at storytelling. And I just wanted to provide them with tools that they can use to come practice storytelling, right? So I'll give them like prompts. I'll give them questions that they can add. We have small groups. So every week I give them prompts and kind of quick lesson. And then they split up into small groups and they'll each tell their own stories based on the prompts. And then they have questions that they have to go through to to check their stories. So for example, if somebody tells a story, I might be like, one of the questions might be uh like what is the myth that you used to believe that turned out to be false, right? Or another question is, why did you used to believe that myth? And what made you change that belief? And then finally, what do you think is the uh, psychology behind that? And a lot of the storytelling that we do has a lot to do with psychology and sociology. What a story is something happened in your life where you live life according to a certain belief that you have, right? And then one day you it crashes with reality. So for example, like Lion King, Simba is like living his life, and then all of a sudden his dad dies, and then everything shatters because he always his belief was that the dad will always be there, he'll always protect me, and like blah blah blah. But completely, his myth has been broken, right? Like what I believe, like so. To give you a like more practical example, like I used to believe that in business you can't show your hand. It's like poker game, right? And I have to be I have to play down my weakness and play up my strengths, and like all of those like business tactics. That turned out to be false, actually. Like what I learned, that was a myth. What I learned is that when you're actually vulnerable, authentic, and building true relationship, like that's the best way to do business, right? So some myth that I used to believe turned out to be false, right? And we have many incidents in our lives like that, right? So the reason why I say psychology, it's psychology and sociology, is because you live your life based on your a certain belief that you have. The world is, and then like we have to go into the psychology of why this person thinks like that, right? Until a moment when your belief is shattered, and that's because the world was actually different than what you thought it was, right? And it happens when somebody you trusted betrays you, cheats on you, like a business partner you trusted like backstabs you, like whoa, right? And that's because there's sociology. Sociology is like how people work as a group, how people think as a group, right? So maybe somebody betrayed you because they wanted to fit in with the crowd, right? So there's a friction, conflict between psychology, your own psychology, and then the sociology coming into conflict, where you have to learn what the real world is like, right? And that's when you drop a little bit of naivete, and then you learn a lesson. And then if you look at like Tolstoy's work, like War and Peace, it's all about sociology, why people go to war, like how people react when they're in groups, like things like that.
It's very
I
interesting
didn't
that you
mean to go
bring
so
that up.
deep.
No, no, no. I'm glad you did because honestly, what ends up happening often when people ask about storytelling in business is
Mhm.
they go, "Well, you need to know what your brand ideals are, and then you put out your personal brand and you make sure you focus only on your avatar." But they make it so marketing speak
Mhm.
based and so shallow level, even when they're going deep on a niche. They're not factoring in these real human values. And I think it's
Mhm.
so important because so many people, whether they're choosing to start a community or they're choosing to build a social presence, they do only go that deep. So the fact that you pull in something like Dostoevsky and you're like, look at the way these things come into play, that just
Yeah.
goes to show how much you're bringing to your community alone as it is, right? And so many people out there are starting communities, and you're like, you know what? I think it's better that instead of a course to build a community. But I've tried joining communities before, and it's very like it's just a funnel to sell a course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
community is literally just a thing you join,
That's
and then
true.
they're like, by the way, here's a course. And so I think it's cool that you flip
It
that
should
on
be
its
the other
head,
way around, actually.
right?
The course should lead to the community because the community is the thing that's ongoing, right? Course is a one-time thing.
How do you maintain a community? Because look, I myself have tried starting a group and even just getting, and maybe this goes back to what you talked about where we're similar, where we don't even want to ask people come to
Mm.
our birthday or whatever. Like, which it's interesting that you went and started a community then because getting people to come together over something and make the time and show up and be consistent, that in
Yeah.
itself is a challenge, right? The people listening to this podcast are part of a community. Not all of them are always active all at the same time. So it's a big take, but
Yeah.
there's constant value being created. How do you
Yeah.
view this and like how are you managing that?
Yeah, so I think of that as my biggest challenge that I need to solve. So yeah, you're right. Like everybody joins the gym January 1st, New Year's, and then by the time February rolls around, most 80% of them stop going, right? And community is the same way. Like people join and they don't really like they kind of like it's hard for people to get people to consistently like show up and things like that, right? So how do you build a successful community? Like that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out. And even within our community, yeah, the participation rate is low, and it's like, and I'm always constantly trying to figure out a way to do it. So, but what I do is I just look at small little gaps here and there, and I try to solve little by little, right? So, for example, one of the things that I saw was that um, in the beginning, I was making it too difficult. So as soon as somebody comes in, it's too difficult. Like they don't even want. They're like, okay, I'll do it later when I have time. So I had to like make it bite size, and so as soon as they come in, I had to give them bite size uh, lessons that they can kind of see value in it right away, immediate gratification. So it'll keep them going, right? Another thing is I I notice that people sign up and they might be excited, and then when the actual time rolls around, their motivation is not there. So one of the things that we did was we have an onboarding team. They're all volunteers, by the way. Like everyone in the community, they're like so deeply involved in the community that they love to give their time to help people get like to commit. So we have an onboarding team. So new members join, they go to onboard, and then they kind of guide them through like, okay, what do you want to get out of this community? And they guide them through like, what's the best way to use it? We have small groups. So every week, people meet in small groups, and we have small group leaders who are also volunteers. Where once a week, I coach our small group leaders, and so they kind of encourage their small group members. So we have a lot, like over the years, like I've kind of implemented a lot of little things like this to try to get people more involved. So it's definitely a lot of work, but I think the difference is, I think a lot of people try to like spend 2 weeks, build a course, sell it, monetize, marketing, and like my business model is a little bit different because I'm looking at it like how Netflix was built or how Tesla was built, like long term, right? So right now, I think I call this like our research and development R&D time. I'm trying to figure out, okay, what's the best way for me to teach somebody storytelling, get them to practice it, and get them to enjoy it so much that they'll keep coming back consistently and actually do it, right? And once I figure out the formula, then like I guess it's gonna start to grow even faster. But I think of it as a long term, so I don't mind investing my time right into it right now to try to figure out the best format.
I think it's great that you're so open about that. It just goes hand in hand with your brand of like, this is where I'm at, is what I'm doing. I'm succeeding. There are still areas I want to improve. And so many people in business refuse to show that card. So it really, you live up to what you say, because you said there was a time when you thought, and many do, that you gotta like do business a certain way. But you're like, hey, look, I'm gonna figure this out. And guess what? When I figure it out, it's gonna be the best damn storytelling community anyone's ever
Yeah.
seen.
I mean,
Uh,
I already think it's the best now, but it'll be even better.
and so you've got this community, right? You've got your agency and you're doing the work there. And then you started a podcast on top of that. Now, someone that's in the podcasting space, it's a lot of work just to do a podcast. How are you now factoring or justifying doing a podcast too?
Well, so this is my second business, right? Like um I've already went through building my agency, and so I think I've learned, you know what? Maybe this is a good lesson. Like once you learn how to build a business, the second business you build is going to be so much easier and so much faster because you know all the mistakes not to make, right? Like, for example, one of the things that a lot of new entrepreneurs don't know how to do is how to delegate and how to manage a team. Like that's one of the hardest things to do and hardest things to learn, right? Obviously. So that's like something that a lot of people find hard to do. But like I've already learned that skill. So, we have designers develop, we have video editors. Like my wife manages all the operations, so she books all the guests for me and everything. So I'm lucky, right? Because I was able to set up a process where I can just show up for hour 90 minutes a week. I love having conversations, and that's another thing about my podcast. Like I wanted to make sure that I do a podcast where I don't have to do a lot of research and time outside. Because like if I'm interviewing somebody about a book or something like that, I have to read the book, and it's a lot of work that goes into it. But I wanted to make sure that I do something that I just invested those time. And like I'm already doing that with our clients, kind of like figuring it. So that's why I formatted it this way so that I can show up, record, our editor is taking care of everything else. In the beginning, obviously, I had to do it all myself. And then at some point, like, once you do it, you're like, okay, I think this can be handed off. This could be handed off. Yeah.
And there's something interesting where you're doing these authentic, I mean, the name of the show, Authentic as Fuck, right? So you're doing these authentic conversations, and yet knowing you, just based even off our conversation right now, it goes deep. Even when you try not to, it automatically turns into that. Do you feel like that comes maybe possibly from some of the training you did when you were studying at the film academy, or is it your engineering mind trying to piece things together as things are happening? What kind of older skills do you feel really carried into being able to run a successful content
Oh,
process?
that's a great question. Yeah, so to answer your question, one, yeah, I think my biggest strength is being able to reverse engineer. And I've always had that, like even when I was young, like my parents hated me because every electronics I had to like take it apart to see how it works, and I'm just super curious. So that causes me to like dive in deep into like psychology and sociology and stuff like that. But recently, what I found is that obviously you can have that type of like very analytical brain, right? Like where you overthink and overanalyze everything, and a lot of people have that. But you're not going to do that towards something you have no interest in, right? So obviously, if something interests you, you're going to do it more. And I guess what I found is that the key for me is I really need to put my all of my focus and attention on the audience. So if it's a podcast, the person interviewing, like you right now, right? I have to put my attention like what does he want, right? Where is like try to put myself in your shoes, right? So if I'm uh talking to in a sales page, right, and telling a story, then I have to put the type of audience, target audience for this product. What what is that person's going through right now? So I noticed that I automatically developed the skill of putting myself in the target audience of the story that I'm writing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And usually it's the older version of me because I know that this person, the the content that this is for is struggling with the same thing I used to struggle with 7 years ago. So a lot of people think like a lot of freelancers that I talk to, it's like, oh my gosh, like I can't raise, I'm like, raise your rate. You should be charging more. And they're like, oh, I can't. Like, I'm just a web designer. Like everybody does web design. Like anyone can do what I can do. Like what I do is not that special, right? So if I raise my rates, like, why would any clients go with me? They'll go anywhere else. But at the same time, when they try to work with freelancers or hire contractors, they're like, oh my gosh, it's so hard to find good designers. Like this, like a lot of times I gotta hire them. They do it wrong, so I just gotta do it myself. I gotta fix it myself, and I can't find somebody that can do it like me, right? So you see the inconsistency in that story is, one, you're saying that anybody can do this, so why would anybody pay me more? But you're saying that you can't find anybody at that rate who's good enough as you. So one of these statements is wrong, right? So I think kind of like that. Like I think I'm constantly trying to, because that's how I actually figured it out. Like that, oh fuck, why am I not raising my rate? I'm complaining about that I can't find good freelancers at good rate. Maybe I should be charging a lot more, right? Like if I'm that valuable. Like so, I'm always trying to put myself in that person's shoes. Try to see, okay, when I was struggling with that, and go there, like literally, mentally, and then try to tell a story from that point of view. And that's been like always helpful for me. Just
It's invaluable. What you just did is invaluable for anyone who's never considered those things. I never thought of it that way, kind of the way your content usually does. And the fact that you can share with people, consider the other side, truly, not as an avatar, but just literally look at the other side of the story and then realize both of them can't be true.
Mhm.
That's a huge lesson, a huge lesson. And with that,
I'll
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'll give you one quick one, by the way, because you said like looking at the other side. Because this is another one that people go, wow. So if I used to, as a designer, I used to complain about when clients go, um, oh, like there's a spelling mistake there. I'm like, oh my gosh, like these are just mock-ups, right? We're gonna get it fixed, like just you know. But then later on, when we started like charging $50,000, $100,000 for websites, like I noticed that like my employees doing that, and from my point of view, I was like, this person's so careless that I'm paying $50,000 for websites, and this person's so careless that they're making me double check their work and their typos, right? You see what I mean when you see the other side.
Yeah.
And I see that about a lot of designers. Like actually, if you want to work with clients at that caliber, they are gonna judge you by those little things. because people that are paying $50,000 for a website, they don't want to babysit you. They want professionals. They want experts. They want to feel like they're taken care of, right? They want that VIP service, and that's like something that a lot of new freelancers I see like don't realize. But when you see the other side of it, you can kind of see why, right? So a lot of the storytelling you can do a lot by just seeing the other side of the story. Yeah,
Even just problem solving in
yeah,
particular, what I'm learning through the way that you use story for problem solving by creating hypotheticals of what the other side looks like is a profound skill, especially for people who get stuck in their head, which I'm definitely guilty of that. And so role playing the other side can unlock so
yeah.
many things. And so I want to roll out the red carpet for you because I know that we're tight on time here. Where do you want people to connect with you? What do you want them to know? Is there a call to action?
Yeah, I think the best way is if you go to my Instagram, I post everything there. So Instagram, sun.yi. And yeah, you can find everything there, like how to join Night Owl Nation, all my content, everything is there.
Right on. Man, I expected nothing less. And thank you so much for being so giving in the episode. You didn't have to go that deep, but you did, and I'm grateful for it. And I hope this isn't the last time you and I get a chance to chat. Honestly, it's
For
been
sure.
one of my favorite conversations.